In this video, we are going to see how to factor quadratic trinomials in the form ax square positive bx positive c, where a is equal to 1. That is, the coefficient of x square is 1. Okay, let's look at an example. Consider the quadratic trinomial, which is x square positive 5x positive 6. Okay, in this quadratic trinomial, the coefficient of x square is 1 because we don't find any number in front of x square. So I have to assume there is 1 in front of x square. So the coefficient of x square is 1. Specifically, the value of a is 1 in this quadratic trinomial. Okay, whenever I want to factor a quadratic trinomial, which is in the form of ax square positive bx positive c, where a is equal to 1, that is the coefficient of x square is 1, I have to consider the constant term in the given quadratic trinomial. So in this case, it's positive 6. Okay, now I have to get two factors for this positive 6 such that the product of the two factors must be equal to positive 6 and the sum of the two factors must be equal to the coefficient of x, which is positive 5 in this case. Okay, to get such two factors, sometimes we may have to apply trial and error. So, for example, I may try like negative 6, negative 1. So here the product of these two factors, negative 6 and negative 1, equals to positive 6. But when I add these two factors, negative 6 and negative 1, which is negative 7, it is not equal to positive 5, which is a coefficient of x. So the factors negative 6, negative 1 I have taken here do not work. Okay, I have to try some other pairs of factors. I think positive 2 and positive 3 will work. When I multiply positive 2 and positive 3, that is equal to positive 6. And when I add positive 2 and positive 3, that is equal to positive 5. Okay, so the two factors, positive 2 and positive 3, work for this quadratic trinomial. Okay, now in the next step, what I need to do is I have to split up the middle term, positive 5x, using the two factors, positive 2, positive 3. Okay, I write the first term x square as it is. Now I'm going to split up the middle term into two parts. So using the two factors, positive 2 and positive 3, then I'll be getting positive 2x, positive 3x, positive 6. So please make sure when you add these two terms, it must be equal to positive 5x. Okay, now what I need to do is I have to factor this expression by grouping. That is, I'm taking the first two terms as one group and the next two terms as another group. Okay, now in the first group, what is the greatest common divisor for the two terms x square and 2x? That is x. So we can factor x from the terms in the first group. So if I factor x out, I'll be getting x positive 2. So to get this result, it's very simple. You just divide this x square and 2x by the 1 we factored out. When I divide this x square by this x, it's just x. When I divide this 2x by x, I just get 2. Okay, the same thing I have to do for the second group, which contains 3x positive 6. So what is the greatest common divisor for this positive 3x and positive 6? That's positive 3. So we can factor positive 3 out. Okay, now to get the stuff inside the parenthesis, I have to divide this 3x by 3. When I divide this 3x by 3, I'm just getting x. When I divide this 6 by 3, I'm getting 2. Okay, now we have two terms. You have to consider this is one term, this is another term. What is the common divisor, greatest common divisor for these two terms? So it's clear, x positive 2. So x positive 2 can be factored out. If I factor x positive 2 out, I have x left in the first term and positive 3 left in the second term. Okay, now I have factored the given quadratic trinomial. So the two factors of the given quadratic trinomial x square positive 5x positive 6 are x positive 2 and x positive 3. Okay, now let's look at another example. Here we have a quadratic trinomial. In this quadratic trinomial also, the coefficient of x square is 1. That is, a is equal to 1. Okay, so to factor this quadratic trinomial, I have to consider the constant term, negative 12. So now I have to get factors, two factors for this negative 12, such that the product is equal to negative 12 and the sum is equal to negative 4. So I think negative 6 positive 2 will work. So when I multiply these two factors, negative 6 and positive 2, that is negative times positive will be negative and 6 times 2 is 12. When I combine negative 6 and positive 2, that is equal to negative 4. Okay, as we have done in the first example, in this example also, we have to split up the middle term negative 4x into two terms using the factors negative 6 and positive 2. So then I get negative 6x, positive 2x, negative 12. When I combine these two terms, negative 6x and positive 2x, that is equal to negative 4x. Okay, now what is the greatest common divisor for these two terms? Just x. So x can be factored out. So if x is factored out and we have to get the stuff inside the parentheses, I have to divide these two terms by x. When I divide x square by x, I just x. When I divide the 6x by x, I just get 6. So here we have negative, so we have negative 6. And the greatest common divisor for 2x and negative 12 is just 2. So I can factor 2 out. So to get the stuff inside the parentheses, I have to divide this one and this one by 2. When I divide both the terms, 2x and 12 by 2, I'm just getting x. And we have negative sign over here, negative. When I divide 12 by 2, it's just 6. Okay, now what's the greatest common divisor for these two terms? So clearly it's x negative 6. So x negative 6 can be factored out. If I factor x negative 6, I have x left in the first term and I have positive 2 left in the second term. So x positive 1, x positive 2. So the two factors of the given quadratic trinomial x square negative 4x negative 12 are x negative 6 and x positive 2. Let's do one more example. Consider the quadratic trinomial x square negative 10x positive 16. So in this quadratic trinomial also the coefficient of x square is just 1. That is the value of a is 1. So to factor this quadratic trinomial, we have to consider the constant term. In this case, it's positive 16. Now I have to get two factors for positive 16 such that the product is equal to positive 16 and the sum of the two factors is equal to negative 10, which is a coefficient of x. I think negative 8 and negative 2 will work. When I multiply negative 8 and negative 2, that is equal to positive 16. When I combine negative 8 and negative 2, that is equal to the middle term, negative 10. Okay, here, as we have done in the previous examples, we have to split up the middle term, negative 10x into two parts using the factors negative 8 and negative 2. Then I'll be getting negative 8x, negative 2x, positive 16. When I combine these two terms, negative 8x and negative 2x, that is equal to negative 10x. Okay, now we can factor this expression by grouping. That is, I have to consider the first two terms as one group and the next two terms as another group. Okay, what is the greatest common divisor for the two terms in the first group? It's just x. So we can factor x out. Okay, if I factor x out, to get the stuff inside the parentheses, I have to divide the terms in the first group by the one you factored out. So here we have factored x out. So I have to divide both x square and 8x by x. If I divide the x square by x, I just get x. If I divide this negative 8x by x, I get negative 8. Okay, here, so what has to be done? What has to be factored out from the terms in the second group? So here, when you try to factor something out from the terms of the second group, please notice, so this term is having negative sign, that is negative 2x. So when I look at the two terms carefully over here, 2 is the greatest common divisor of 2x and 16. Since we have negative sign, we have over here, we have to factor negative 2 from the two terms of the second group. Okay, now to get the stuff inside the parentheses, I have to divide this negative 2x by this negative 2. Okay, when I divide this negative 2x by negative 2, this negative 2 will cancel. I just get x. Now, I have to divide this positive 16 by this negative 2. So 2 goes into 1 times, 2 goes into 16, 8 times. So positive times negative will become negative 8. So we can recheck, that is, we can distribute this negative 2 to this one and this one. So we must be getting the stuff what we have over here. When I distribute this negative 2 to the this x, it will be negative 2x. And when I distribute this negative 2 to negative 8, it will be positive 16. So what we have done so far is correct. Okay, now what's the greatest common divisor for these two terms? Clearly, it's x negative 8. So x negative 8 can be factored out, and we have left with x in the first term, and we have left with negative 2 in the second term. So we can write negative 2. Okay, now we got the two factors of the given trinomial. The two factors are x negative 8 and x negative 2.